Hello viewers, g'day guys, how are you? I hope you are well. I'm feeling well, not great, but well enough these days. Working in hospitality, things seem to be getting back to normal. We seem to be coming out of this pandemic, but there are lots of things going on in the world. Still lots of trouble overseas with war and things like that. But recently I was doing a little bit of thinking and meditating and praying and just praying into my own personal situation, as you do. And I was thinking, I'm a middle-aged man, I suppose you could say. I'm in my 50s now, and I do a fairly menial job in hospitality. My title does have the word manager in it, but I effectively work at a front desk reception area. So I'm doing front line kind of customer service work, and it can be quite brutal in hospitality. People can be quite difficult and demanding. It requires a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion to work in my job. It's a very service-orientated profession, and I've chosen it specifically for that reason. It's not an occupation that I have to do. Technically, I'm actually qualified as a lawyer, and I've worked in the areas of criminal and family law practice. So I'm not, lacking in skills or education. I don't have limited options with my career path. I can do a lot of things, and actually recently I was offered a promotion in my job to a frontline management position on a day shift, but I actually declined that position, strangely enough. And you might think that's an odd thing to do. Why would somebody turn down an opportunity for promotion? Well, I'll give you my reasoning in a nutshell, because I am a Christian, and I do read my Bible quite regularly and meditate upon it, and ponder what the life of a Christian should be based on my understanding of the scriptures. And I think there is a great temptation for us to seek our self-interest in this life. I think the world is telling us to be selfish, to be self-focused, to seek positions of power and authority over others. And that is, I think, a great temptation for the Christian to want to do that, to want to elevate themselves above others, to put on airs and graces, to have power, authority and control over others, to have wealth, possessions, to live a good life in a kind of happy and prosperous way. And we think to ourselves, why shouldn't we be entitled to these things? But really, it's not whether we should be entitled to these things, it's whether God has decreed or declared, or whether God says this is the right thing for us to do with our lives. Not so much what we feel is the right thing or what is good for us or best for us, but what God thinks is the right thing for us to do, and what He knows is good for us and best for us. And, I'm like other Christians. I think to myself, when do I enter this time of great prosperity, that is talked about in the Bible? And, and why do I have to go through all these challenges, and why do I have to stay in this humble position? And we're all challenged like this with these kind of questions and these decisions in our life. Do we go for, a big house, a big car, a big family? Do we lead a life where we're in control of everything and on top of others? And I would have to say, as a Christian, the answer to that is no, we shouldn't do that. And there's scriptural basis for it. And I was just looking at a passage this morning when I was reading my Bible in Luke. I came across Luke chapter 22, verse 26, where it says that the greatest among us will be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. Yeah, so that's something that Jesus said. And that's quite amazing and powerful, And Jesus certainly modelled that example in his life. He says he came to serve and not be served. Even though he is our king, he is a servant king. And that is a very powerful and important message of the Bible, of Jesus' teachings, I believe. That we are called to be servants, not to be rulers and lords over people, but that through our humble service we will ultimately be exalted by God to the highest place. And there is a place for us in the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, and that is far more important than this life here and now. And that's why we make these sacrifices. That's why we choose to have a humble life. That's why we choose not to be promoted into wealth and power and prosperity and to be in a position where we're lording it over others, but we are in fact leaders by example. We are people who will be leaders in God's kingdom, and we do it by example in the world to show others how our King leads others through a servant nature, and we emulate that. So, and I was concerned, about this issue of prosperity and thinking to myself, I am still a humble man at my age. I don't have a lot of material wealth, and I don't have a big family. I don't own a big house, and I don't drive a big car. None of these things, Still a single man and with a cat. But I count my blessings. I have a roof over my head. I have meals. 3 meals a day if I want it. I have a well enough paid job and pretty good security in that job. I live in a peaceful country, one that's free from sickness and disease. I have public health services. Lots of the trappings of a first world country. Certainly, I'm not living on the streets or anything like that. So actually, in a worldly sense, I am still quite a rich man, even though I occupy in my society a relatively humble position. I'm still wealthy by worldly standards. If you look around the world, there are people living in much greater need and poverty than someone like me. I don't need to be climbing a corporate ladder and becoming a greedy and selfish person just because I can. I am called to be humble and a servant, and that's incredibly challenging, and I find it challenging. But I think it's the Spirit of God that moves me to make the decisions that I make, and I believe I am making the right decisions, even though I personally suffer and I personally struggle because of it. It pains me, it pains my heart, and it challenges me immensely, but I persist, I endure through that, and I recently got an answer to a prayer I was praying about, the idea of when will this prosperity come, in my life, and, feeling kind of disappointed that I haven't seen a great prosperity in my life, and so I had this dream recently, and I believe it was an answer to my prayer about that question, because in the dream I was in a house, and it was an incredibly joyful place. I was in an incredibly joyful place. I was surrounded by many people. There was a lot of laughter. There was a lot of joy. Literally, there was wealth and prosperity pouring into my house. from the walls. Like I could see money, like I believe it was probably symbolic of wealth and prosperity, but my understanding of wealth and prosperity from this perspective is money, so I could see coins and cash and stuff pouring into my house, literally pouring in to the walls of it. Like there was so much wealth pouring in to this house that I was in. The people I was surrounded by were incredibly joyful and happy. I felt incredibly joyful and happy, and I could see the manifestations of the wealth and prosperity that I had literally pouring in. And the people that I spoke to were all so loving and comforting, If I told a joke, everyone would laugh at my jokes, and that's fantastic. I mean, because not a lot of people laugh at my jokes, in this lifetime now. I like to tell a joke every now and then, and like to, have fun with that. But this is a very miserable world, and there are a lot of miserable people, and the worldly perspective is very different. It treats Christians very harshly. If a Christian tells a joke, nobody laughs, and things like that. It's very harsh and very cruel towards us. So, but in God's kingdom, I was loved. I was one of theirs. I was one of the boys, one of the people, and I was loved and accepted. And people laughed at my jokes and stuff like that, and I felt this immense joy and pleasure in this heavenly life that I had, and that was a massive encouragement to me. I thought, okay, yes, I can see that. This is a vision of what life will be like symbolically in heaven. Great wealth, great prosperity, great love, great appreciation, and great joy. Yeah, so that was wonderfully encouraging. When I woke up from the dream, it still lingered in my mind. I was still thinking about how somebody had been laughing at a joke that I'd told, and the joke was still on the tip of my mouth as I woke up. It was almost as though I was still in a conversation with somebody, telling them a joke or something. And I felt greatly encouraged by that dream. I felt like this was an answer to the prayer that I had prayed, asking God, where was this great prosperity that I was going to see in my lifetime for being a humble and faithful servant. And it is there. It is a future promise, and it is there. It is something that I can live in and walk in today, knowing that in myself that God has blessed me greatly, abundantly in heaven. And that is something I can be assured of through Jesus Christ, my Lord, your Lord and Saviour. Yeah, so I hope that's a word of encouragement to you in these difficult times. God bless you all.